So what we like to do is we like to start with, and I call this starting at the start. I like to ask business owners, what is it they're even trying to do with this business? Why? What? You know as much as I do that owning a business takes a little bit of craziness,
Yep.
and it comes at you hard and fast. It's risky. It's a lot of sleepless nights. So I want to make sure that the clients I work with are really clear on why they're doing this, because it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of your family.
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Kopp, and on this podcast, I talk with entrepreneurs and industry professionals about the challenges and the wins in their business. See the vision, drive the future. Welcome to episode 12 of the Future Driven podcast. Today, I've got Travis Huisman with us today from the Flexure group. Travis, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So Travis and I connected through a mutual friend and colleague, and I was instantly drawn to your company, Travis, because it has to do with money. And I think a lot of people get attracted to that topic and are, a lot of people struggle in that topic. And so before we kind of dive into the Flexure group and what that does, give us a little bit about your background, your career, how you got to today.
Yeah, you bet. I'm an accountant. I like to refer to myself now as a recovering accountant. But I got my formal education in accounting at Western Washington University, passed the CPA exam, and spent the first 15 years of my career in both public accounting and private accounting, doing what you would expect accountants to do, doing taxes, doing auditing, all of the things that accountants do behind the scenes for business owners out there. About 15 years ago now, 10 years ago, I ended up at a large firm called Moss Adams up in Bellingham. And I ended up in their business owner succession group. They had a group called BOSS, it was Business Owner Succession Services. And we helped the business owners think through, what their business was worth, how they're going to transition it from one ownership to the next, whether that's transitioning to the next generation, transitioning to a third party, or transitioning to employees, internal management. And specifically, the role I played in that was business financial planning for these clients. So I would help them understand what their business was worth today, what they needed it to be worth at transition, and how they eventually got the value out of that business that they were trying to achieve. And not just financial value, but also legacy value, community value, a lot of personal passion value also. So we considered all those things. While I was doing that work for Moss Adams, I did some advisory work for a client called McNett Corporation. And eventually the McNett husband and wife invited me into the company to come be their CFO. They are a consumer products company that sells products into the outdoor space, and I love the outdoors, so it was a very interesting opportunity for me. Okay. So I jumped out of Moss Adams. They said, "Hey, come inside. We're going to be transitioning the company in the next 7 years. Why don't you come in, be our CFO, and help us with that transition internally?" So I did, and never looked back.
What year was that?
What year was that? That was 2009.
Okay.
2009. So it was right in the turmoil of the economy.
Right.
A lot going on during 2009, 2010. But this company, what's interesting, their product line was aimed at care and repair for outdoor gear. So at a time when people were losing their jobs, almost similar to the pandemic we're in today. When tough times happen, people go to the outdoors for peace and solace, and they couldn't afford that new jacket or that new tent, so they bought repair gear to make sure their old equipment was still lively. And so actually McNett thrived during that downturn in the economy, and actually had some really good growth. So that was exciting. I stayed at the CFO role for only 8-10 months before everyone realized that I really enjoyed much more than just finance. So I moved into the chief operating role, which was very much running all of the daily operations for the company. We had a CEO at the time that also split his time with a sister company. And we started a planned transition for me to move into the CEO role. And so it was about 18 months after I started with the company that I moved into the CEO role. And I love telling this story because it's a kind of a baptism by fire story. So I took over in 2011. And at the time, about 40% of our revenue was coming from the military exchanges. We had a lot of on-base sales. It was really good business for us. But this was during the time when Obama announced withdrawal of troops from Iraq and drawdown of troops. And so our military revenue went to zero almost overnight and stayed there for about 6 months before it started to recover. And when it recovered, it only recovered to about 30% of what the original revenue was. So substantial hit to our revenue just after I took over as CEO. And it was a transformational career experience for me. We had an amazing team. Not only the owners, they'd been doing this for 25 plus years at that point, but the executive team we had and the leadership team were just amazing people. We rallied. We were able to get through 2012, 2013, pretty much break even, and then came out. 2014 was one of our most profitable years we've ever had as a company. And it really helped us set up for sale. Ended up selling the company in 2015 and transitioned to a new private owner out of Canada in 2016.
Okay. And really quick, so just because I'm curious, you mentioned that it's like repair equipment. So like what were the type of products, like patches or?
Exactly. So it was adhesives, patches, tapes, waterproofings.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Sewing kits.
And military was a big part of the business. And then what was the other kind of bigger bucket as part of the business? Direct to consumer?
No, actually, we were a pretty traditional wholesale distribution business at that time. So we were busy selling our products into big box stores like REI, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops,
Yeah.
as well as local retailers like we have in this area, sporting goods shops.
Okay.
Yeah, and we sold our products internationally.
Okay, cool. So you came on as CFO, quickly transitioned to COO, and then into CEO. So that was a
Exactly.
pretty quick transition over, it sounds like a short period of time, 2 years or so.
It
Uh,
was.
and then you helped take them to sale. So tell us a little bit about that. What did that look like? And what did that end up for you as your career?
Yeah, I love to say now that I really had no business doing business owner succession consulting at Moss Adams until I went through an internal transition. I just learned so much about a transition from the inside. And, I think probably a lot of people assume that a transition, a sale or a transition internally is mostly about the numbers. the what's my company worth and how can I get cash and what's the deal look like. The truth is that's really a small portion of what a transition's about, and it's really about people and culture. Both the leaving people, the entity that's selling, and what do they do next? And man, I've owned this company for 30 years, and now all of a sudden I can't go into the office every day. And then, a company acquires you, and there's a couple different cultures that have to blend together, and leadership teams that blend together. And how does all that work? So that was a big learning experience, and just fantastic opportunity to get to see that, live, and go through that process.
How many people at the company that you were CEO of?
We had about 55 people.
55 people. Yeah. And then they got acquired by a larger company.
It's interesting. It was a much larger revenue company, but they were an outsourced company. So they actually had a smaller staff. I think they were a team of 35 people.
Got it. Cool. So then how did that end up? And I don't want to ruin the plot line, but is that what led you to Flexure Group?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's pretty common that when you go through a transition like that, a lot of the senior leadership team will eventually transition out of the company.
Yeah.
And myself and a couple of the other team did decide to transition, not because of anything negative really, but just because when you go from a culture you're driving to a culture that somebody else is driving and it's a little different, that's a bit of a difficult transition. So
Sure.
I decided it was time. I was pretty fried from going through a transition. One thing, a little side note, when you're leading an internal transition, you're really walking a tightrope and kind of leading two lives. Just a real quick example. Literally, I felt like I'd walk down the hall and I'd go into one conference room where we were talking about how to get the company ready for sale and talking about the new owners and all this, but you couldn't share that with anybody on the team. So then I would walk down the hall and go in another conference room and rah rah, cheer the team up. Hey, we have a strategic plan. We need to push forward, and all of the team leadership that goes along with that. So
right.
It unfortunately does no one any good to share too much information. So you end up bottling a lot of that up, and you kind of feel like you're walking a bit of a lie at times. So that kind of took a lot out of me. So I decided to leave and go open my own thing.
Okay, great. And so what year was that?
That was 2016.
Okay, so give us a little bit about 2016. You transition, and so what is this something you've always wanted to do? Start your own company, or is it just kind of the circumstances kind of presented itself, and you were at that point in your career?
I told the McNetts, Dwight and Nancy McNett that owned the company I worked for, I told them, I said, I don't think I can ever work for anyone else. It was such an amazing experience working for them. And they taught me a lot about running a business and being entrepreneurial.
Yep.
So when I left there, I really had it in mind that I would probably open my own thing. But the spark for Flexure really was my cousin and I out on the river talking about she's a bookkeeper, wasn't enjoying what she was doing. I said, well, we can probably do that better. I know a lot about accounting and bookkeeping, and frankly, I wouldn't mind hiding for a couple years in a pretty small, just little bookkeeping company. So why don't we just go ahead and start that? So that's how it started, as simple as that.
Okay, cool. So give us a little bit about, I find your company fairly unique. When I opened up, I think on the surface it's all about accounting, but you even said it earlier that it's more than that. It's about your people. It's about your legacy plans. It's about, where you're planning to take the company. And there's so much that goes into financial planning, and each situation is a little bit different based on goals, capabilities, needs. So, I'd like to hear from you, like, in your own words, like, how does Flexure different than any other bookkeeping company out there or accounting firm?
Yeah, well, we're different because we try not to think like accountants. I think my whole career, I've always been a little bit of a black sheep, the accountant that didn't quite fit in, and so public accounting firms wouldn't really know what to do with me. Which is a great example of why at Moss Adams I ended up in their consulting group, which consulting groups at CPA firms is often where the entrepreneurial big picture thinkers end up, because they're not going to be strapped to a desk doing tax returns
Yep.
and audits. So I built up a real passion for entrepreneurs, what they do for our communities. In a lot of ways, they're community heroes. The money they donate to our kids' soccer teams and to Rotary and Kiwanis and all those things. So I really built up this real respect for them. And during my time working with them, both in public and private accounting, I just saw this real gap between what they need and what traditional accounting firms provide. So I used to tell tax people that I would work with in CPA firms, I would say, your life is 24/7 taxes. It's what you do, it's what you're good at, and that's fantastic. But these business owners, that's just a tiny little sliver of their life. And the rest of the time, they're drinking from a fire hose trying to figure this thing out called building a business. And there's so much more we should be offering them. And that really is, I think, the basis for Flexure. We recognize that accounting needs to happen to keep people on the straight and narrow, but and to keep score, kind of track progress. But at the end of the day, it's accounting really is there just to help us answer some questions to aid these business owners, these entrepreneurs in achieving their goals and dreams. So what we like to do is we like to start with, and I call this starting at the start. I like to ask business owners, what is it they're even trying to do with this business? Why? What? As much as I do that owning a business takes a little bit of craziness.
Yep.
And it comes at you hard and fast. It's risky. It's, a lot of sleepless nights. So I want to make sure that the clients I work with are really clear on why they're doing this, because it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of your family. So, I think the best answer is to be really clear on what you're trying to achieve so you can be intentional and take intentional action towards those things. Running a business that you want to pass down to 3 generations that has your name on it, that's a very different strategy than growing a business for 5 to 10 years and pumping as much value as you can and selling out to a third party. Those are very different strategies. So that's, I like to start at the start. I like to make sure we are clear on what that owner is trying to accomplish so we can align our advice and our services as best as possible with those goals.
Well, that's great. And I mean, that puts a little bit of passion and energy behind kind of what you're trying to do. And you probably speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, kind of thoughts that way. The biggest thing that I find with accounting and bookkeeping is just knowing the actual facts, right? I think that, I'm very driven by my gut and passion. And I'm on the creative side, so I'm just going for it and I'm just expecting it to work out. But as my company has matured, knowing the facts and knowing what's happening on a 90-day horizon always has been a huge empowerment for me so that I can make decisions today so I don't get caught in a pinch and then all of my effort is put into figuring out how I'm going to make payroll or whatever it might be. Like, so that for me has been the biggest benefit. And so I only assume that that's a big part of what you provide to small to medium sized businesses as well, is the forecasting and just the actual knowledge of where their cash and where they're going.
Absolutely. And maybe even before that, we have a saying, yeah, you have to trust the numbers. And so number one is accounting is a bit rear view mirror, but that rear view mirror look is important to know what you've done historically. If you don't get the numbers in the right buckets and your margins aren't trustworthy, it's hard to make decisions looking forward. But certainly you get numbers you can trust, and then we are big proponents of budgets and forecasts. Not so much because of the technical outcome. I mean, having a budget is great, but because of the process that it forces business owners and leaders to go through to get to a budget, you have to really think through decision making about how you're going to spend your resources.
Yeah, no, and I guess the biggest thing I get out of it is the discipline. So if I know I only have X number to spend in, say, marketing per quarter, well, then you can do whatever you want within that bucket. But once you use up that amount of money, that's it. So you got to be wise. You got to then all of a sudden you got yourself on, okay, here's the 90-day plan, which kind of piggybacks into kind of essentially what we do, is like we're constantly helping people forecast and put together marketing plans and so forth. So tell me a little bit about the size of your company, and I'd like to know a little bit about like your leadership style. As it sounds like you've gone through a couple different variations of companies. What I mean, Moss Adams, I would call that kind of like an agency type of where they probably had their own clients, and then you came internal with the McNett's family, and now you've created your own culture in business. How big are you, and what is your leadership style like?
Yeah. So, like I said before, my goal with starting Flexure was to kind of hide for a couple of years and just keep it really simple. And fast forward to today, where we serve a lot of clients, and we have a team now of 9 people, including myself. And it's a great team. We are a virtual company. We do have an office locally, but we are there very little. We spend a lot of time out with our clients, kind of integrating as part of their team. And then a lot of our work today, because of technology, is done remote. And
if I can jump in there, because
yeah,
we had a conversation prior to this, you were doing that pre-COVID. So that wasn't
correct.
anything that was driven like my company was driven towards that. So you've been doing this since inception?
Correct. Since 2016. Yeah. And I would love to tell you that it was some grand vision, but honestly, I think it was probably a bit of laziness. It's like, I want to have laptop will travel, right? And I want to be able to do work from, Arizona in the winter, and I want to be able to do work maybe someday from my boat. And so I really wanted to build this company that we could get access to all of our client information as long as we had internet.
So a year ago this week, when everybody said all staff must go home, you were probably like, okay, I think we're okay. We're now we're just going to focus on helping our clients and continue to do that.
Yeah, really the biggest change for us was that now our clients accepted what we were doing in a bigger way, and they became more comfortable with the technology. And frankly, the technology sale or sell now has been much easier. Getting all those companies that used to be on QuickBooks Desktop off and onto QuickBooks Online, those kind of discussions are a lot easier today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lots of benefit I think is going to come out of this, for small to medium sized businesses. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership style. What kind of CEO are you? Is that your title, CEO?
Correct.
Okay, so what kind of CEO are you? Being that you're a virtual office already, the biggest thing that I'm focusing on is that culture connectivity, and not having, just gathering around the conference table for a quick powwow. We can do it virtually, but it doesn't have the same vibe. Like, how have you kept the culture up, and how do you continue to motivate your team?
Yeah, that's it. I think I am far from the only one struggling with that right now, right? Culture in a virtual world is being defined as we speak.
Right.
And the tools that executives have at their disposal or had at their disposal don't work anymore in the virtual world necessarily. So if I would say there's been one thing in the last several years that's been a challenge as we've grown as a team, it's been trying to figure out this piece, and I am far from an expert at it. But um, I have always been, my leadership style is probably the opposite of a micromanager, maybe even to the point of being somewhat negative. I believe that I'm hiring really smart, great people, and I treat them like adults, and I expect them to be personally accountable and personally responsible. We kind of have a couple unwritten rules in our company that uh, as long as you're around for a core set of hours and available to our clients, and you communicate well, I don't really care what your schedule is. I expect my team to be available between 9 and 3 for our clients every day. But if they want to start work at 6 and have an early afternoon off, as long as their clients are well communicated to and their team knows where they are and how to get a hold of them, that works for me. Um, we now have we have a team member on the East Coast, and we now have a team member in the Philippines. And so trying to build a culture around that is a new challenge that we're leaning into. I think over communication is so important. So anyway, I would say my leadership style is pretty hands off, treating people like adults and expecting that we're all clear about what we're out here doing and how we're going to do it. We just had a team meeting to reinforce our core values, our annual plan. And I love leaving those meetings saying, okay, go forth and prosper, right? This is what's important to us, so let's go do it. So that I would say, I'll add a couple things I'm really passionate about. One is the thing that I believe pulled McNett out of that revenue challenge with the military was that our team rallied around a really great strategic plan. We communicated that plan really well to our whole team, top to bottom company. And so everybody was clear on what's important to us and where we're going. And then we aligned everyone with an incentive program that was a bonus pool type program. Everybody in the company, I don't care what your position was, shared equally in that bonus program. And so we basically said, here's our plan, here's our expected outcomes. If we meet these goals, everybody gets bonus pool. And I have never seen such power from alignment in my life. Everybody just really got their backs into it, and everybody was clear how to make decisions, because they knew what was important and where we were going. So that is a leadership style that's important to me. We are doing that at Flexure, and that is one of the core elements that I advise my clients based on.
That's great. So, Flexure sounds like a fairly unique company because you're helping with potentially business planning and finance and culture, and it kind of crosses all bases. So how do you see your company growing in the future? And with, you talk about your leadership style, I think there's going to be a lot more adaptation to that because of the situations that we're in. You are. I mean, there's a lot of leaders out there that are probably struggling with not being able to communicate hourly or whatever it might be with their team. You got to just trust your team. And you're right. Everybody's adults. Everybody's hired here for a job. Let's let them do that. And the team is empowered that way, right? And so
Right.
that's a big part of it. So I think you were ahead of the game on that already. And so what does the future look like for Flexure Group, and where do you want to take this company?
Yeah, that's the fun part, right? Thinking about that. I think a couple things that are really important. One is accounting, bookkeeping specifically, are becoming more and more compliance, or sorry, not compliance, more and more commoditized. Um, you know, all of the accounting softwares out there are kind of competing against accountants to really take away their bookkeeping work, which honestly, it's non-value added work, and the more we can streamline that, the better. So I'm all for that, but it does change the dynamic then of what our role is with our client. Um, so I I believe that we're going to, with automation, with the tools at our disposal today, with data, and being able to get our hands on more and more data. I believe the future of accounting and the future of what Flexure is going to be positioned to do is move that rear view window look to a future looking window. I think we're going to see more and more predictive analytics. We're going to see alert systems that give an owner heads up when something seems to be trending the wrong way. You know as well as I do, most business owners out there in the small business realm manage by how much cash is in their bank account, and it's just a really poor way to manage your business. We have IT companies that for quite a while now have given their network clients dashboards that light up when things are going wrong, but we're not really doing a great job of that in accounting. So I think predictive analytics, I think blurring the lines between personal financial planning for business owners and business financial planning is a big part of where Flexure is going to be positioned. Personal financial planning for a business owner is very unique because they often don't have a lot of cash to be investing in other investments. Their whole life is committed to this one stock called their business.
Right.
And doing personal planning for that is unique and different. So Flexure will definitely be positioned. We are now, but we're going to get better and better at blending the reporting, the analytics, the information that we can give a business owner between their personal and business.
I think that's great. And I think that you're, adapting to that type of thing. Cause you are right. There's so much automation that's happening. There's so many, whether it's a software or it's a outsourced service that you can use, and I've dibbled and dabbled in some of those, but for me, I need someone accountable on my account that I know that I can connect with and know. And I like what you're talking about, the predictive start of it, because that's what I want to get better at personally. And for other business owners is, what does the next 90, 180 days look like? So again, we can make decisions today so we're not in a pinch in the future. And a lot of the decisions that I'm kind of making sometimes are like, I think this is the right decision. And that's, the challenge, right?
Yeah. It's business is definitely a mix of art and science, but there is so much historical information about how to run a good company and what data results from running a good company that we aren't doing a good job of putting into the hands of entrepreneurs and business owners. So I think we have a lot of work to do on that science side so that business owners really are artists, right? I mean, they love to live in the creative realm in a lot of cases. They're big picture thinkers, they're strategists, they're shucking and jiving all the time, trying to find the next best opportunity or the next best way to capitalize on the opportunity. The more we can give them good information at their disposal when they need it in the format they need it, the better they are going to be at the art side of the equation.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think it's huge, and it sounds like you got a little bit of a mix of left brain, right brain, which can be very beneficial for companies, because it seems like uh, companies or leaders lean one way for sure. So, no, that's great, Travis. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the show with me and give us a little bit of your background. And I think we'll be definitely talking offline about Flexure Group, because I'm interested about more of your services. And yeah, appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me. And as much as we may talk about that, I need some help getting the word out. So I think we'll be chatting about that as well.
Awesome. Thanks again, Travis.
Thank you.